Well, Darren, we're going to war with Iran.
Well, it, it seems like we are officially at war with Iran now. Now, it hasn't been said, but we have taken direct action against them. We struck their nuclear sites in Isfahan, Fordow, and Natanz. So, we're no longer just shooting down ballistic missiles headed towards Israel. We're actually taking part in the bombing ourselves. And that is as of this last Saturday. Not a good development. It does appear that Israel and Iran have reached a ceasefire deal just moments ago. And now a ceasefire is not, an end to the war. I'm sure actions will still be taken in the future by both sides, but there is a possible off ramp because Iran earlier today, I'm a little out of chronological order, but that's okay. Iran earlier today, they did a symbolic strike against a U.S. base in Qatar. Yeah, it was symbolic. They sent, I believe, six ballistic missiles to this base, which had already been evacuated. They projected this strike out, or they warned the U.S. that it was going to happen, and so every ballistic missile was intercepted and no casualties were taken. So I think the Iranians do seek an off ramp. I do think everyone wants to bring the heat down. I think all parties, for that matter, since Israel and Iran have agreed to this Qatar brokered ceasefire deal. So, which now Trump is making it seem like the war is over. He's saying it's the 12-day war, which is kind of weird because I thought it started on the 13th and it's the 13th now. So even if you count for time differences, maybe it's an 11-day war. I don't know where he's getting this 12 from, but
Maybe
maybe I'm
like different time zones. I don't actually know if that's true, but I just
yeah, I think
surely he
I
wouldn't
think the
tweet it
time
out,
zones
right?
Yeah, I think the time zones can account for at least one day. I mean, because our time when it started, it was the 12th, and today's the 23rd. So that would be 11 days. But yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe there's another time zone. I don't. Maybe I'm not thinking about it right. But yeah, but he's calling it a 12-day war. So he's making it sound like it's all over. A lot of the questions I was going to ask are a little nullified now because of the developments that have literally happened in like the past hour. Let me ask you this: do you think the ceasefire is going to last?
Ideally, yeah. Yeah, I sure would hope so. But I don't think that I am not optimistic that it will. Like if you were making me place a bet on whether or not it was going to last, I would say that it probably doesn't last. I mean, they're not even designed to last. They're designed to, pause the war, right? It's not to end the war. That would be like a peace deal or a treaty or, this is just a pause in the fighting. Like that's all a ceasefire is. So if you were asking me, and again, I am the worst at predictions. All right, don't get me wrong. I happen to have been right about war with Iran, but that's kind of like one in a million. But I would be willing to bet that in a couple of months, there's going to be some secret thing, from the Israelis about how, hey, you actually didn't hit all the nuclear programs, or they moved all their uranium, right? And we need the U.S. involved right now. Only the U.S. can do this strike, and then we're back involved again, and then who knows how it escalates from there. Um,
Well,
or Israel just keeps striking Iran, assassinating top leader. I mean, this thing could go. I To answer your question, I apologize for rambling. It will not last. I don't think. No way. It won't last a year.
Yeah, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too.
Are you questioning if Israel is committed?
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
Well, I think you're probably right. I mean, just look at the playbook with Israel and Palestine ever since October 7th, and then look at the playbook, even what they did with Lebanon. You know, people would, rather some like party in the Gulf, like Qatar or the U.S. or whatever, would broker some kind of short-term ceasefire, and the entire time Israel would just keep striking the other side just at a lower level.
Right.
So, in my opinion, there's no way this thing lasts. I'm in full agreement with you. I would be shocked if it lasts a year. Yeah, I don't know. On the other hand, though, I mean, I don't think Israel. I think both Israel and Iran got a taste of what war with each other would look like. I don't think either one of them liked it. I think maybe it was a wake up call to the Israelis, like, we don't actually have enough stuff to intercept all these missiles. Like, if it goes on long enough, we're going to have to start picking and choosing what we shoot down, and we're going to start getting hit quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, probably was part of the calculation. That's probably why the ceasefire has happened. And then I think for Iran, I mean, Iran has certainly lost this fight. I mean, if you want to call it, if we're saying that this is the 12-day war and it's over, then Israel obviously won this. I don't know if they could have kept winning if it were dragged out, but in the 12 days, Israel is totally humiliated Iran, I think.
Oh yeah. I mean they've been just kind of a laughing stock, right? I mean they've just been basically obliterated in every way but like the most literal way, you know? Like
Oh, yeah.
I mean the only thing that could have been worse is regime change. Like that's basically the final step here to keep them from, like that's the only way this really could have gone worse.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think so. I mean, honestly, the Ayatollah's kind of lucky he's not dead, because I was thinking that was on the horizon, but maybe not. Maybe not. I, I, I don't mean to monopolize because I've been talking a lot, but I do have a question for you though.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to, how I said, the Iranian strike against our Qatar base was, symbolic, and that, it was really like a face saving thing for Iran.
Right. Right.
Uh, do you, how do you interpret our attack on Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan, in particular Fordo, but the other bases as well? Let me just throw something out there.
Mm-hmm.
What if our strike was symbolic? And I only say that because, uh, you know, we don't have a real damage assessment. It's like pretty much impossible to assess the damage. I would assume a lot of damage has been done, but you look at the satellite images and you see the entry holes of these mops, the massive ordnance penetrators
Mm-hmm.
or whatever it is. And So you can see where, there's quite a few holes where it went in, where these 30,000-pound bombs went in, but you're not seeing any craterization of the mountain. There's no like collapsing like you would maybe think there would be. So it's up in the air. Nobody knows what damage has been done. And then I was thinking, okay, so we have like, let me back up just even a little more. Going back to the night of when we did strike, I saw things on Twitter like Iranian officials were saying that the damage was limited. Now, of course, they have an incentive to say that to save face, all that. But if the damage really was limited and maybe like only the entrances to the complex were really destroyed and ultimately the centrifuges themselves and the real meat of the facility is okay. I mean, what if our strikes were symbolic in a way? Like maybe, I mean, in the moment, it felt very scary. Like, oh my gosh, what have we just done? But maybe it was almost a play by Trump to, I don't know, maybe it was a symbolic strike. Like, okay, this will get the Israelis off my back for a moment. This will make it look like we're committed, but we're not actually going to really damage them. I
Well,
just don't know.
yeah, well, that's the thing, right? Like it's extremely unclear, right? We won't have a true damage assessment for months. Like the Israel, it's not just us, right? It's not just crackpots on Twitter. Like on the ground reporters are telling us that it's been like severely less than what we're leading on, right? I mean, JD Vance is going on everywhere and saying that it's completely destroyed. Pete Hegseth, it's completely destroyed. It's obliterated, right? The Israelis are not saying that. The Israelis are saying that it is, pretty damaged, but it's not destroyed. Like they're not even saying that the centrifuges are destroyed. And I understand the Israeli incentive to, say that, right? To drag us in or continue strikes, right? But and there is also the possibility that they moved all the centrifuges in the uranium. So like all of this is possible. We just don't know, and we're not. It sucks to say this, but we're not gonna know for several months.
Yeah, all we can really do is speculate, and it sucks because whenever the Iranians or the Israelis or our government speaks, I have to like factor in like so many grains of salt. Like, okay, but for face saving purposes, we have to frame it like this. So maybe subtract X away from whatever the result they say it is, and then you'll get the actual result. So I just don't know. And
Right. Well, there was no scenario where we draw. I think it's like between Fordo, Esfahan, and Natanz. I think it's something like 14 total bunker buster bombs and 30 something Tomahawk missiles. Right. So the idea that Trump was going to come out on that podium and say, hey, we actually may not have gotten them. We actually may need to do more. That's just not going to happen. You know what I mean?
oh yeah,
Like there's, the idea that I mean we probably spent, billions of dollars on that attack. Like the idea that they're going to come out and say like, yeah, we actually, this wasn't enough. We're going to have to put boots on the ground. Trump was never going to say that. This was always going to be a clear, decisive victory, right? But I will say, I am more leaning that these sites are, at the very least, severely damaged. Um, just because of the sheer mass of ordinances that was dropped. Now, I understand that, like, there's obviously reports that in Fordo, that all the entrances were, they threw up earthworks. So, like, they basically threw mud, rock, and everything to block the entrances, so that way you couldn't. So the I don't know, it's kind of technical for the audience, but the idea was to drop the bunker busters on the entrances so that way it's easier to get deeper into the ground, right? Into the heart of the base. Well, apparently there's already intelligence saying that they threw up earthworks, rubble, rock, and everything, so that way the bunker busters don't go as deep, right? Now, having said that, we still dropped fucking 12, you know? So,
Oh yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, part of me is like, okay, the Iranians already moved out all the personnel and a ton of the equipment and apparently all of the enriched uranium. So, maybe we did know about that, maybe we didn't. I don't know. Maybe it is a symbolic strike. On the other hand, how do you hit a site with that much ordnance and it like not get obliterated?
well,
Like
and I understand it's deep, deep, deep underground. Um, it's like
yeah,
if you dropped a nuke on a mountain, it's not gonna level the mountain. You know what I mean? It's just gonna it's just gonna clear like the top, few feet of earth, right? Because it's like the pressure is gonna distribute where there's air, right? So that's kind of it just really depends on how deep the bunker busters got.
yeah, and that's another thing. It's impossible to know because I saw a graphic of how these things work. Like they're so heavy that when they drop, with the point down, it's basically like you're hammering a nail straight into the ground. So it sinks like really far, like
Hmm.
maybe like 60 meters or something. But I think Fordo is like 90 meters deep or something, if I have that right. So even if you got the max sinkage, which is like 60 meters, and then it blows up, so you get a little deeper. Is that enough? I don't know because I mean the it's probably all reinforced with like concrete and stuff. So I don't know. I don't know. Who knows? There's no way we could know, but
Right, yeah. I mean, we're not breaking news on this podcast, but I am skeptical in terms of, the total effectiveness. Like, I'm sure the strikes were effective. I'm just worried, like, A, were the centrifuges there? If they were there, how damaged are they? How much uranium did they get out of there? Because, I mean, it's not like, Iran doesn't have some sort of intelligence that they had some sort of idea that Fordo was going to get hit. Surely they took some sort of precaution, right? I mean, these aren't idiots. I know we like to pretend they're Iron Age savages who think the world is flat, but these are people with like, intelligent people to make a nuclear bomb. Maybe they thought, like let's get
yeah.
the um, just a thought, just a thought. But it doesn't particularly change my judgment on anything other than like because like even if it wasn't a successful strike, it's just gonna go towards more escalation in the future, which maybe and I know I'm monopolizing here, but
No,
don't
you're
you
fine. You're fine.
don't you think it might be more possible now that a ceasefire is on the table, because like if you had all the stuff and the site was completely destroyed, wouldn't you want a ceasefire so that way you could rebuild it?
Yeah, yeah. I think all of the developments lately, on one hand, I mean they've all been pretty big escalations, but on the other hand, I think I think Israel and Iran, for that matter, going back to what I said earlier, they both kind of got a taste of what war with each other would look like, and I don't think I don't think either of them want it as bad. I think pre-war, Israel definitely wanted all the smoke, I guess, but
Hmm.
but I think Iran has remained reluctant to escalate, and I think Israel has realized that it's not something that they could win over the long term, and it would be incredibly destabilizing. So yeah, I think they both want to regroup, rebuild. Uh, Israel certainly doesn't have as much to rebuild, but Iran probably wants to build back its defenses and clear out clear up their nuclear sites, assess the damage, make sure nothing's, melting down, I guess. And yeah, I think, there is the optimistic view that the ceasefire will hold for a little while. And I don't think that's implausible, but I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't. It's just so hard to say.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I don't, and just real quick to go on Fordo, just a quick fact check that I Googled that, might make us more skeptical is these bunker busters, unless they hit the exact same locations, they're actually like their maximum depth is not even designed to reach the depths that Fordo is. So, like, they think the facility is about 60 feet at least lower than the effectiveness of the bomb used, like the bunker buster. So, um,
Dang.
which is why we dropped 12, right? That's how you solve that problem, evidently, is what the article says is, you drop one and you don't double your distance, right? You basically, like, each bomb you drop is half as effective, is what this article was saying. So, and that's if they hit, like, basically the same spot. So, like you said, we won't know the damages. But,
Yeah, and I saw like satellite images, and it looked like I was able to clearly see like six different holes from what I was seeing. And there were like three clustered together, and then there were another three clustered together. I didn't see the satellite images of the other six, but I mean, yeah, if neither of those series of three were able to reach inside the facility, then I just don't think you can destroy it with ordnance. Anything short of a nuke, and even then, I don't know that a nuke would get it. So
right, right.
I just don't know. And, uh, you know, it, and now, I mean, now that the entryways have been reduced to rubble, I don't even know if like a IDF commando force could even sneak in and destroy it at this point. At this point, I mean, they would have to wait for the Iranians to actually go out, excavate the site, rebuild it, make it structurally sound, and then they could probably go in, sneak in theoretically, and bomb it from the inside, I suppose. But so yeah, I don't even know what the fate of this site will be. Maybe they just condemn it and don't return to it. It might not even, it might not even be worth salvaging.
Right. Yeah, well, I'm sure. Well, there's no shortage of mountains in Iran. So, if they wanted a new site, I'm sure they could, build a new site. As a matter of fact, it's almost certain that they are, right? I mean, you'd be crazy not to, actually.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Yeah, you'd
uh,
be crazy to go back to the same one, I think. And we only learned about the existence of Fordo relatively recently. So it's entirely possible that they already have other mountain, subterranean sites that we don't know of. And, that's very well where they could have stashed their previously enriched uranium. It might be under some other mountain that we have no idea is, secretly concealing a base. So who
yeah,
knows?
yeah, no, that's entirely possible. And the good news is, I guess, if you're like pro bombing these facilities, is these bombs are literally designed for the mountains of Iran and the mountains of North Korea. Which North Korea is not a very mountainous country, but all of their facilities are obviously hidden underneath mountains. So that way we couldn't bomb them. So, but yeah, very good. If it's cool with you, I'd like to switch to the ceasefire now. I'd love to get your. I know we've talked about it a little bit, but I was just curious if you thought, um, do you think that Israel breaks it first? Do you think Iran breaks it first? Do you think this thing lasts forever? Um, obviously not going to happen, right? Um, Or do you think that like this is just like a pause that way both sides can kind of, lick their wounds, rearm, do and then we go back to fighting?
Israel will definitely break it first. Uh, on one hand, I don't know. I could see it being a really long pause, because when was that? It was in 2024 that Iran retaliated against Israel for like didn't like Israel bomb an embassy in Tehran,
Oh, and
or
they,
no,
and
no, no,
they
they bombed
it
an
was in
embassy
Syria.
in Syria, and it
Right.
was the Iranian embassy. My bad.
Right, right. And they telegraphed attack. They basically they gave Israel and the United States, I can't remember how many hours it was in advance, but it was at least 3 to 4. And we intercepted virtually all of the missiles as well as Israel. So, um, yeah, I mean it was kind of like the attack in Qatar. It was basically just like we have to respond. We don't want to escalate this, so we're gonna tell you that we're launching missiles and we're gonna aim in some farmland, you know,
Yeah.
so that way if they do manage by a miracle of God to get through, it's not gonna hit anything. So, um, but interesting attack here. I think Israel is more, and not just Israel. Our bases in the Middle East are more exposed than people realize. Those interceptors are not easy to make. They're incredibly complicated. They're incredibly expensive too. So for every one intercept we make, Iran can make like something like 6 ballistic missiles. So like just like war gaming the math here, right? There will be
Oh
a
yeah.
point, like you said, where we have to pick and choose which missiles do we let. And here's the thing: you don't know the target off the bat. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. And
So
and another factor is that all our bases are basically like right on the edge of Iran. They're like on the shore of the Gulf almost. I mean they're like all in. There's like a bunch of them in Kuwait. There's at least I don't know how many in Bahrain, but
Qatar
UAE,
and
Qatar,
the
Saudi
ones
Arabia.
the ones in Iraq are right across the border, right, literally right over the mountains.
Oh yeah,
So
so there's just so much less time and distance to like actually attempt at shooting these down. Whereas Israel, when we shoot things
right,
down in Israel, we have like ships and the Red Sea. We have ships in the Persian Gulf. We have land-based air defense and like Jordan and Israel itself, and in Iraq, and so there's just a ton of like area in between where we have like things like shooting these ballistic missiles down. But if, like you said, like if you're on some base in Iraq and you're right, close. I mean, you're pretty close to Iran. I mean that's just the geography. So there's really just a really limited time in which you could actually shoot something down. It's just really precarious. So uh, yeah, I'm glad it's de-escalated because we could see a lot of dead American servicemen if Iran really wanted to start striking U.S. bases.
oh yeah, we've got probably half 100,000, so 50,000 troops in the region. So I mean that's not a small number of Americans, right? Um,
Oh yeah.
Totally, and all the more reason that they shouldn't have done this strike. I mean, why would you? You basically gambled with the life of thousands of American soldiers, but for no reason, right? I mean, like I know you and I are under the belief that there was no attempt to get a nuclear bomb, right? And this was basically just it almost seems like at this point Trump's trying to like kind of have it both ways, where he's trying to like please the Israel lobby and also, stay true to like the anti-war coalition. So, um, I don't know that it's working for either side, actually. I'm sure Israel is very upset that they're not doing full-on regime change. And I don't know that some of the MAGA base is buying this whole, like, this is the end of it thing. So,
Yeah, yeah, I think there's definitely a dialectic in Trump's head, trying to reconcile these two opposing things. I mean, trying to psychologize him is just impossible. I don't know if
right.
like because he has to know, I would think, like he has to know that Iran actually wasn't attempting to get a nuke. I mean, I think he just did it because he knew it would play well on Fox, maybe. I don't even know. Like, do you think he even thinks Iran was building a nuke or hurtling towards one? I don't I don't know. I truly don't know if he really believes it, like if he actually believes Netanyahu's lies and then, or if he just believes, I don't know, like Mark Levin or something, you
Well,
know.
so so I have a pretty low opinion of Trump. So I don't think he's smart at all. Like I don't think his IQ is nearly what his reputation is. So I don't think that he knows. That's just and maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, but for sure, like Hegseth knows, Tulsi Gabbard for sure knows, right? Tulsi Gabbard, the director of the CIA, they all know for a fucking fact that Iran was not, you know, planning on pursuing a bomb. They know that for a fact, and they are comfortable. I mean, we saw the similar thing with and I understand that you and I were literally infants and children when this happened, but Colin Powell was basically the person of Tulsi Gabbard, where they were willing to lie and basically say, no, 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 no. There are weapons of mass destruction, right? And then they would ask him, like, well, what's the intelligence on that? It's like, well, we can't tell you, you know or
Oh
they're
yeah.
like, well, what's the connection? Well, because it's crazy. Because here's how the Iraq War happened, right? And just you know, so they tried to do they did 9/11, right? That was the first thing, and then there was like, well, that's not true, and it's like, well, now they're getting weapons of mass destruction, and it's like, what, So like as soon as and we're seeing the same thing change here, right? Like the goalposts are already moving. So like, have you seen Charlie Kirk, like his evolution on this issue?
Well, he just flips on a dime no matter, he just spins it as positive no matter what Trump does. So, but yeah, I mean, he's had a bit of an evolution where it's like, no war with Iran. Then he's like, oh, well, no direct fighting with Iran. We can shoot down ballistic missiles, but we can't actually strike. Oh, we struck. Well, no boots on the ground. It
Right.
kind of went like that.
Well,
But
and
no,
then the last one was, he's like, no regime change, right? And then it's like, well, actually, like, if it's like a bottom up regime change, like, I don't have a problem with that. And it's like, so basically, there's no scenario where Charlie Kirk can look at this and go, oh, Trump messed up. I don't support this. That can't happen. That's not allowed to happen, you know? So,
yeah, well, I mean, his whole career is based on cheerleading it no matter what. So if he
right.
ever did have a dissenting view, it wouldn't, for one thing, it wouldn't help him financially. Number two, he just wouldn't have much of a career going forward if he went against it. So I mean, that's certainly a part of it. There's the grift aspect of it, but it is pretty spineless to just go along and then like change up in real time, like literally on the timeline. We're in front of everyone.
It can be said, that uh, you know, Democratic like commentators, for example, like Destiny and Hassan Piker and all of them, they're just literally that stupid as their takes. You know what I mean? But like, so for example, like Charlie Kirk, like you said, he's just grifting, right? So like he knows better and he feels different than what he's saying. but because of the money aspect and the cozying up to power and it's not just him, like Ben Shapiro cozies up to power. Like they're a part of the Republican apparatus at this point. They're like a focal point of their strategy versus like the Democrat and their political commentators. They're completely like separated. They actually are like almost like there's like a wall between the commentators and the social media influencers versus like the Republican Party. They're like a part of the coalition and they're a part of the plan. So I just think it's interesting because what that allows for is it allows for like, Destiny to disagree with the Biden administration, Hassan definitely, right? David Pakman, all these people can oppose in several instances the administration that they supported during the election. But, for the Republican side, you really don't see that. Other than, of course, the people who aren't getting literally paid. Like, for
Yeah,
example, Nick Fuentes and a couple others. So,
that is an interesting phenomenon, and yeah, now that you say it, I can definitely, see and uh, I can just kind of recall instances, especially with figures like Hassan. I mean, he certainly dissents in many areas with the administration and is vocal about it, and so are many Democratic commentators. I mean, from the limited amount I've seen, Sam Cedar and then Kyle Kulinski. I mean, people like this, they dissent all the time. They're still all going to vote at the end of the day for, whatever the Democratic Party puts up. I mean, I don't think I could ever see an instance in which they didn't, because even the most radical of them, Hassan, didn't he still vote for Kamala? So, he's not really that radical. I mean, he's willing to still, at the end of the day, vote
yeah, well,
for
here's
them.
here's my thing with Hassan. So like I actually I'm unsure if he voted for Kamala, but he definitely preferred Kamala to Trump. And not that it's relevant to anything you said, but he views Trump and Kamala as virtually identical. Kamala is just marginally better. Which is that's an insane take, I feel like. But I just felt I don't know why I just felt the need to mention that. It's not relevant to anything you said, but
Well, I won't speculate on Hassan anymore because I actually don't know as much about. So maybe he didn't vote. Who knows? But there has been. You did say something interesting that actually I want to touch on. Pretty much since Trump bombed Iran, uh, there's been discourse on the timeline. All these liberals saying y'all should have just voted for her, y'all should have just voted for Kamala.
Mhm.
Uh, and on one hand, I'm like, okay, yeah, Kamala wouldn't be as bad on this issue as Trump. But do you think if she were in his shoes right now, I don't think she would have it in her to restrain Israel. I don't think she'd be able to do that. But it is my belief that she would not have bombed Fordo and all in the other sites. I don't think she would have done that.
I
So what?
also listen, I I also don't believe she would have assuming the Israelis asked us for an okay to do decapitation strikes and strikes on like, Iranian scientists. I don't think that she would have okayed that. Now Israel may have done them anyway, but and she would have probably, been forced to support them, like in front of the press and whatnot. But I am skeptical of the idea that she would have bombed Fordo. I mean that it's just too much risk.
Yeah, I don't see her doing that. I mean, on one hand, like I don't see her restraining Israel though, so I could see a timeline in which she got in and then maybe Israel just kept escalating and it did eventually drag us in. But unlike Trump, I don't think she would go in like almost enthusiastically. I think there would at least be some reticence there, or hesitance, I should say.
Well, and I will say,
Reluctance.
I do honestly think her policy during the campaign was way more focused domestically. Like she wasn't running on, we're going to be the number one supporter of Israel, right? Or we're going to end the Ukraine war or any of that. Like she was more focused on like domestic policy. So I would be shocked because she's competent enough to know that like this right now, what's going on is going to hurt at some level the domestic agenda. It just will.
Yeah, I don't know.
And
There's
I don't know if she would have risked it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't see her doing that. But on the other hand, I mean, there are things she said like, uh, and this was she didn't do a lot of interviews, so it's hard to like weight this comment against everything else. But uh, some interviewer, I forget who, but they asked her a question like, "Who is the biggest threat to America currently?" And she said Iran. She said Iran instead of like China, which is probably what she should have said. Or,
Right.
I think the question went like, who poses the biggest threat? And to me, like, on one hand, like, I get that it's not the worst answer, I guess, but it also kind of like shows if that's what she immediately thought of, then maybe that kind of shows her priorities. Or, it could have just been a comment where she regretted it afterwards, but in the moment she was just, it's the first thing she thought of. So it just kind of popped out. But I don't know.
Hmm.
I mean, I certainly, all these liberals are like pooping on these Trump voters that, you know, are ignorant, but they legitimately, believed, you know, sincerely that Trump would be anti-war. And I don't think it does any good to poop on them because I mean, Trump is kind of like the master of like saying two different things and then getting people to project their desires upon him. So he's very skilled at that. And then Kamala wasn't exactly being convincing either. I mean, she did say that she would do nothing different than Biden when questioned. And I forget who asked her that, but that was also a famous campaign gaffe of hers. So,
Well, and the reason it actually irritates me when the left, so for example, like Dave Smith is this guy that you're talking about, right? This guy that was like, basically campaigning for Trump, endorsed Trump, voted for Trump, right? And
mm-hmm.
then this happens, and he's like, oh yeah, no, I'm off the fucking ship. This is unbelievable. This is unrevocable. Like I can't support this, right? And he's catching hell for it, and honestly, he should. He should specifically because he's smart enough to know better. um, like the guy that pulled it out of the Iran deal and the guy that assassinated a foreign leader on false pretenses. Yeah, that guy's not going to go to war with Iran, despite, just look at his donors. Like, are you out of your fucking mind? Like, but the average everyday person, that person should be welcomed back. And the reason the Democratic coalition sucks is because we're, for the party of tolerance, we're just so insufferable when it comes like when there's no winning with grace with us. There's none of that. It is all like we told you so. It's finger wagging. It's condescending, and it turns people. So those people that are pissed off, like you're saying, they're not going to vote Democrat because we basically shunned them. They're just going to stay at home, and it's like that's somehow worse, like um
Oh yeah, and it's weird because you know, I I don't know how much Democrats are like that in real life. I don't think it's as extreme. It's certainly nowhere near as extreme as the online spaces, but I think there's just like a bit of an epidemic of like mentally ill people online, and and that's probably where they like go to like lash out, and that's probably where they do their purity politics, and so it probably gives normal people a false impression
Right.
of Democrats when they're not all so purity testy tut tutty, you know.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's this. If you went basically just off the online world, I mean, you'd have thought the Democrats are all these radical anti-war socialists, rent control, food prices, all that shit, right? But in reality, the average Democrat is not that far off from a Republican. They just have some very key differences domestically, right? But like they're not arguing for a fundamental change of the American economic system or the political system. They're just not. The average Democrat is just not. I don't know what to tell people. They're not. That you'd have thought 60% of the party was Hassan Piker, and it's like no, they're just the people who won't shut the hell up. Now, the Republicans, I think, is a totally different story. I think at least 30% of the Republicans are literally deplorables and cannot be saved. Like we cannot help them.
Well, speaking of, you actually made me think of something, and I haven't done a ton of research into it. But have you seen that socialist guy up in New York may win the mayoral race, Zoran Mamdani?
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know too much about. First of all, he's running against Andrew Cuomo. And for
Yeah.
those of you who don't know, he had to leave the governorship in basically disgrace. I think that's fair to say. But since he's resigned, he's been relevant in New York politics since he's been gone. And outside of the governorship in New York, that's the top position statewide in New York, obviously. So this is very big race, and I this could be a bellwether for which way the Democrats are going to go in terms of resistance to Trump, in terms of like a new way forward. Because I don't even know if he's exact. He may brand himself as a socialist, but he's more of a New Deal Democrat, to be honest with you. Like, here's the thing: like most socialists that tell people that they're socialist, they're not. Like Bernie Sanders isn't a real socialist, right? He's just a New Deal Democrat.
Yeah, they're just kind of more for expanding like programs like Zoran, he wants to do free bus fare, I guess. So he basically just doesn't want to charge people for riding the bus. Uh to me, he also wants to do price controlled government subsidized food markets. So
Yeah, I
you
did
know,
that could be a neat experiment for the five boroughs. I would be interested to see how that worked. I mean, it may be a total disaster, but I'd be glad to know, to be honest with you.
yeah, my assumption is that it would be a disaster, but I mean, it'll be a nice experiment to run. I'd like to at least maybe if and when it fails, if it is implemented, maybe it'll be a good lesson to trust the free market. But who knows? Maybe no lessons will be learned. But I it's amazing, these policies. I mean, don't they know that grocery stores operate at like a 2% margin? I mean, we learned this in business school. I mean, the
Yeah, it's
profit
it's
on
the
these things.
most competitive industry there is. They operate like you said, their margin is less than 2% sometimes. I mean, that's you're literally squeaking by, you know?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, it's insane. But I mean, more power to them. Let them try. Let's see what happens, and when it fails, then maybe people will wake up. But I saw data from the rank choice. They do these like virtual polls, and if it's a ranked choice type of type of uh, system, then he actually has I believe a 52% chance of winning, or maybe even a little higher. So
Yeah,
he
it's probably slightly worse than a coin flip for him right now. Which, if you would have told him this in April, that I mean, he would have taken that in a heartbeat. Are you you know? Are you kidding me? If you would have told him in April you have a 40% chance to win the governor's race, or sorry, the mayoral race, he would have jumped at that. He didn't imagine he'd get this far.
oh yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, like you said, maybe it is a bellwether moment because if he does win, maybe it will set the tone for the Democrats going into 2026 and then finally in 2028. But because, nothing has really been established yet in that regard. And I think the Democrats are still waiting for their national figure to arise. So,
Right. Well,
yeah,
there.
it's something interesting to look out for.
Yeah, because here's the thing. So the DNC is basically and the RNC, that's who picks all the major candidates for the midterms, right? And they're going to be watching this race with the biggest magnifying glass you could possibly imagine. Because if Mamdi or Mamdani wins, right, and if he wins handily too, then the DNC is going to be like, okay, there is clearly like a movement here, because New York is actually not as blue as people think. Now, New York City is, but that's their base, right? So, um,
Oh, yeah.
like,
Yeah, I mean, there's upstate where our mutual friend is located currently, and it's quite a bit different.
right, but I mean, like the average Democrat is like a New Yorker in the sense that like not in terms of like their values and whatnot, but like in the sense that like they go to work every day, they're busting their ass, they're incredibly productive, they're incredibly educated. Like that is your average Democrat, you know. They're more moderate than people think. So I am very curious if they're. Yeah, the election is tomorrow, is it not? Well, we're recording this on a Monday, folks, so don't hate us. Because you're like the election's already over. We already know who won. Don't calm the fuck down. We're recording this early, okay? Um, but yeah, this I'm interested. That's all I want to say. I'm just very interested.
It'll be something to watch for. Yeah, it is tomorrow, and I'm kind of. I mean, on one hand, I'm a tad ambivalent if he wins or not. I because I don't live in New York. Uh, but I mean, I imagine if I was a New Yorker, I would probably prefer Cuomo or yeah, I'd probably prefer Cuomo over Adams, surely. So,
Over Adams, without a doubt, without a doubt.
yeah, Adams has problems, but yeah, I mean, honestly, though, if he wins, I say okay, let him win, and then let him fail with these absurd policies, and then it'll be a nice rebuttal of the things he believes in, of these anti-market beliefs, and yeah, I'm all for that. I mean, but and on the other hand, I'm like, well, I don't think people actually learn lessons, because they do these anti-market things that aren't going to work, and things like it have been done and have failed in the past, and people still try to attempt it. So whatever. But
Yeah, I am incredibly curious how this shakes out, and I'm not super, so like I don't even I literally, because I'm not a New Yorker, obviously. I haven't really studied, like I didn't watch their debate. I don't know. I know their general views, but I don't even like for example, I'm sure the only thing I've seen was that grocery store subsidy thing you were talking about. But like I'm pretty sure also he supports like rent control and a million, and maybe that's not true. I'm just saying that like I am literally clueless on what his positions are, but generally I would say if you're going anti-free market, I don't know how successful you're going to be. This is America, you know.
yeah, well, he does want to freeze. I forget how the rent control system in New York works because there is rent stabilized housing. so if he does get elected mayor and he does enact his agenda, it's not all apartments that he can control, and I forget the requirements, but there will be apartments that he will be able to rent stabilize, I think, and I don't know the exact mechanism, but
Yeah.
on one hand, that I mean, New York does seem pretty unlivable in terms of the rent, but part of that is also because there's enough demand there that these exorbitant prices can be charged. So, I mean, it's just hard to say. I mean, is New York even really a place where you would want to live long term? I mean, I'm sure it would be fun to live there, but it's kind of like a Disneyland. It's more of like an amusement park with like jobs than it is an actual place to like raise a family. So I don't know. I have different thoughts in my head about New York
No,
City.
yeah, New York City is a place to it's a place to work and have your career. I mean, there's not don't get me wrong, there is residential areas down there, but it is mostly a money-making behemoth. I mean, make no mistake about it, Darren. New York City is the most American capitalist city on the planet. It is where the best of us go to work in finance, the best of us go to work in law, the best of us go to learn, school. Like this, it is the best of Americans are concentrated in New York City doing things unbelievable, right? R&D is there, finance is there. Like it is the most American city on the planet. But like you said, it's become so expensive that the only people that can afford to live there are these insanely rich people. So you're pricing out, the blue collar, the ugly masses, right? The what used to be the Democratic base, but is no longer, I would argue. So
Oh yeah, I really don't know how honestly any normal person could afford to live there. I mean, like if you're a mechanic up in New York, I mean, how do you even live? I'm trying to think of like a job where somebody makes enough to where they're not just going to be totally subsidized by the government, but doesn't make enough to like where they're living large. You know, like a teacher maybe. Like how would a teacher in Manhattan even afford to live? I'm sure they would have to live in a different borough or something. I don't know.
yeah, yeah, and I'm sure that New York is also one of those cities that the average commute to work is significantly longer than it is here. So like in Oklahoma, which is where we're based out of. If you're more than an hour to work and then an hour back from work, that I would consider that an insanely long commute. You know, most places
Oh
it's
yeah.
45 minutes max with traffic. You know, but if you really wanted to, if time was a serious thing, you could probably move within 20 minutes of your job and it not even be a real problem, right? But in New York, that is not an option. It's just so dense
Oh
that
yeah, there's all the walking you have to do, and then you have to wait on the train, and then yeah, yeah, you would have to reserve like at least 30 minutes, and that's if you're lucky, you know, every which way.
Yeah, I mean minimum, minimum. So
Oh yeah, I visited once, and I mean it's a really cool place. I highly recommend visiting, but I truly don't know how people live there. It's on one hand, it's really cool to experience it. On the other hand, it is like filthy, and there's literally trash and rats everywhere, and and then the people themselves are not of the highest quality either. So yeah, there's that as well.
yeah, maybe. Who do you think will win? You may have already answered that, but I was just
Mm,
curious.
I'm honestly kind of thinking that Mamdani guy will win, and I say that because uh, I feel like his voters are more likely to be higher propensity. So like he's capturing more of the college educated crowd. He's
Mm-hmm.
capturing surprisingly more men, but he has an advantage with the whites, and then does he does less well with minorities and women, believe it or not, but minorities are less likely to come out and vote. And a big chunk of Cuomo's base is the black population of New York, but they're less likely to come out and vote. So uh, I'm just looking at like the demographics and then the fact that it's basically in coin flip territory right now. I'm thinking that Mamdani has a slight edge just because of the types of people who are more likely to turn out. So even if the numbers are similar, so I'm thinking Mamdani. That's my prediction. How about you though? I mean we'll see tomorrow, but what about
Yeah.
you?
Again, I'm totally sorry to the audience who is watching this who already knows the outcome. But yeah, we're recording this on Monday. Get over it. Yeah, I mean, I am indifferent on like I literally don't even know. Like this would be a pure guess, not even an educated guess. Like I have deliberately gone out of my way just because I don't care. I feel like there's too much other stuff I was needing to read up on and do. But if I had to guess, I mean, my hope is that Mamdani is going to win because, even though there might be stuff that I would not agree with, he seems like he's more energetic, more like fiscally left, which is what I mean, I'm all about that. So, even if that has to come with some like off-putting social like actual socialism, I would be willing to take that if it means that like the pullback is not as drastic. Because like if we go from Cuomo, then they go back to like a Mayor Adams type versus like if Zoran wins, right? Maybe they just go back to a Cuomo, So I'm worried that the pull, which I know that sounds almost juvenile, but
No,
uh,
no, I think that's
because
fair.
it is totally possible that we go. Because I mean, hell, we went from Obama to Trump. It's not like we went like Obama, Biden, Trump. We went Obama, Trump, Biden, Trump. It's so crazy. But well,
Cuomo, I think, has the boomers though. So I don't know. Sometimes if you have the boomers, you're more likely to perform pretty well. So I don't know. I could be convinced either way. I don't know who will
well,
win.
and it's pretty. It sounds like they've got so they don't have competing coalitions. It sounds like from what you're saying, like they have pretty distinct coalitions, right? Between like Cuomo's got boomers, the blacks, I should the African Americans. Um, Zoran has the college educated, the whites, the youth, right?
Yeah, yeah, he
Yeah.
definitely has the youth.
So at that point, it just becomes like which person drives more turnout in their coalition, right? So I will say AOC did endorse Zoran, and AOC is like the kingmaker in the Bronx at least, and I understand there's four other boroughs. But I don't think that means nothing. Like, do you think that helps or do you think that hurts him? Just curious.
It definitely helps him. She has a lot of pull over there, and uh,
Publicity alone, honestly.
oh yeah, name recognition. I believe he got a Bernie Sanders endorsement as well, so that should count for something, I think. Yeah, I think he's got a good chance. I mean, yeah, we'll see tomorrow who wins. But speaking of winning, before we sign off, before we end the episode, since I think we've basically covered the New York topic, I want to say I'm very proud of the Oklahoma City Thunder. You know, last night we took home the gold. We won the championship, first in history
Yes,
for
sir.
Oklahoma. So I'm just very pleased, and I will be attending the parade tomorrow, so I'm very excited.
I will as well, actually. That's awesome. So, yes, good on us. Game seven, couldn't have asked for a tougher fight. I do feel bad for Halliburton, and here's why. So over the next 5 seasons, we're built to be back. We will almost certainly at least reach another NBA Finals and have a chance at winning a title, right? Indiana, the way that their team is built, they're young-ish, right? They've got some veterans. They may never be back. Um, and this was their shot. And for them to go out like that, don't get me wrong, I'm super glad that we won, and I'm super glad Tyrese Halliburton wasn't on the floor. But I feel awful that that happened to him in that moment, even though it benefited us. I just feel like, damn. Now to those people that are saying that there's an asterisk next to our championship, you can just go ahead and shut the fuck up. All right. The idea that there's an asterisk next to that'd be like, so when Kawhi Leonard beat the Golden State Warriors with Durant, right? Nobody said, well, Durant was hurt. Nobody said that. They said, "Oh, Kawhi's a legend. We got to build a statue of this guy." We're
Yeah.
not doing that. All right. Tyrese Halliburton is not nearly the player Kevin Durant was. So, like, the idea that, like, losing, no, he averaged 15 points a game. I'm not saying it was a lock. I'm just saying that we still would have won the game.
Oh yeah, I mean the difference just between our stars. I mean, like you said, Tyrese averaged like 15 a game. Well, Shea averaged like nearly 30 a game. So there's just a whole realm of difference between, and the stats don't lie either. I mean, you can look at how our team performs versus theirs. And honestly, the only reason it was so close is because Halliburton in game one made that like Hail Mary shot that just totally saved them at the very tail end of the game. So, I people say asterisk, whatever. I mean, that's just uninformed. They're just coping. They're coping because they're jealous.
Yeah.
But
And if this here's the thing, if this exact same team was in LA or Boston or Miami or Chicago, these big markets, there would be nobody saying that. It's just because we're a small market team and people like to hate. They're like, "Oh, boo, Oklahoma City won? Oh no, boo hoo." Cry me a fucking river, all right? This team is legitimately one of the top 5 teams all time. It's the all-time defensive team for sure. I mean, I understand our offense is not that great, outside of SGA, obviously, but defensive wise, this might be the best team ever assembled. So, to
oh
to
yeah,
to discount us like that, I think is, like you said, it's just pure coping. That's all. They're just jealous that they couldn't win a title this year.
yeah, they're mad, and I get that emotions are high if like you're a big Halliburton fan and you saw him go out like that. But I mean, at the same time, it is what it is. The stats don't lie, and we are the better team. We're a historic team. We broke a lot of records this season, and uh, yeah, I mean
And
I,
there's no team built for success for the next 7 seasons than us. So, good on us.